I just made the introduction.
Hello.
Do you speak Turkish, by the way? I know you go to Turkey.
Yeah, I'm studying it, but not yet. No.
Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Russo.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about what happened last week, especially with the rumors, and then what happened this week with the downgrading and its effect in the emerging markets. I know you do cover the emerging markets and the Turkish companies, Turkish economy. There was a huge investment outflow on Friday, and today again we see the ISE going down. What do you think should we expect from the emerging markets under the light of what's happening in the U.S.?
I think if we use history as a guide, and you think back on 2008, when the U.S. market was so troubled, the emerging markets had a far more serious collapse.
Yes.
So I think the U.S. markets may have been down 35 or 40% in 2008. India and China, main indices, may have been down 70%. Now, over the subsequent 3 years, they've made all of that back. And so there's just more volatility, more expectations. See, what's uncertain are the consequences to their growth as providers of goods and services to the West, if the demand from the West weakens. It's the old story about if America catches the cold, then the emerging markets get the flu, because we have our own problems, but they have a leverage effect on the countries that require our presence to pull themselves forward through manufacturing and service. So I think that's the way the market works. Now, if you ask what about the problems relating to both the debt ceiling and now more recently with the downgrade of our U.S. debt.
Yeah, and what do you think about the downgrading? Do you think that was it was an error, or was it a political thing or economic?
I believe it's simply just addressing the developments that have taken place over the last 24 months.
So it was a trigger.
We have, through the stimulus spending and through TARP, we have effectively taken our national debt as a percent of GDP up sharply. It may have gone from 40% to 80% over the last 3 years. Well, that doesn't come for free, and that doesn't show financial discipline and conservativeness. It's what you might expect from a AAA.
Yes.
It also doesn't take into account the term structure of our debt. So one of the things that if I were S&P I'd be concerned about, as I would be if I were a lender to the U.S., is that so much of our borrowing nationally is being done in the overnight market, so to speak, in the one year or less maturity Treasury bills. With this type of interest rate environment, and knowing that America is going to require the use of debt for decades to come, I would think as a country, ought to be issuing significant amounts of debt out in the 30-year plus time frame, even though the nominal interest rate we'd bear is much higher than what we have to pay to issue money overnight. Because we're issuing money today at 0.2%.
Exactly, yes.
And if we wanted to extend the term of those borrowings to 30 years, we might have to pay 3.5%. But that is a reasonable price to pay for certainty. And at the moment, the way we run our fiscal affairs as a nation, we leave ourselves exposed to terrific uncertainty. And if I were a rating agency, that would concern me.
It's interesting that you say, if I were the rating agency, I would be concerned. David Beers from S&P today said that there's a possibility that he might change the outlook to normal, to stable, if the deficit cutting is implemented successfully. Do you think, in your opinion, is it possible?
Well, Warren Buffett said today that the U.S. is really a quadruple A.
Yes.
And we're very rich as a country.
Yeah.
We're extremely rich as a country, blessed with resources and hard work and all of the rest. The only question is our relative competitiveness isn't necessarily advancing, and for which we'll need education. We'll need a commitment to sort of open our shores to the best talent from anywhere in the world to come in and jumpstart our own country's economy. It's not clear we'll do that. And it's not a static world, because while we're waiting to find out whether we have the courage to take the important decisions on spending and on investment, we're up against China and India, who are moving forward independently of our own timing. And that competitive gap closes every day.
Talking about competition, and that's my last question, last 30 seconds.
Yes.
what are you watching? What should you be investing in, do you think, in your opinion? Or what do you advise?
Well, for me, what I most have to focus on is the globalization of the consumer's taste. And so for me, something like a bombing in Mumbai in a public square that's intended to frighten people back into former habits, or that somehow censures conduct that's more secular going forward. It's an issue in Turkey, let's say, right now. We own companies, and we own shares of Diageo, and we own Pernod Ricard. We own businesses that sell spirits to Turkey. Well, you can imagine we're concerned about the developments as an open society in Turkey, both as a consumer of our products and a source of supply for other things. But it really makes a difference as to whether or not there's an open society for both goods and services, and for something as specific as spirits, which is what Diageo recently bought into. What will the tax regime look like? Will it be confiscatory? Will it be punitive? And if so, what will that mean to the return on the several $billion that Diageo invested into the Turkish market to buy what has been a terrific brand, with the belief that the future won't be changed simply because of the policies at the national governmental level? So I worry mostly about fair trade, open markets, and open societies, because in that environment, our businesses, whether it's Heineken, Nestle, Unilever, Pernod Ricard, Diageo, whatever they are, will be free to compete. And with that, I think we can succeid as investors.
We need to talk more in another show. I look forward to talking to you more about it. Thank you so much for coming. Evet, Thomas Russo ile sohbetimiz burada sona eriyor. Teşekkürler. Görüşmek üzere diyorum.